Hey Dave,
Hey Adam, how you doing?
pretty good, and yourself?
Pretty good.
Good. Well, as you know, we're filling out and talking about what's left over that you have to pay for the colleges that you might want to go to. We already broke down your award letters from University of New Hampshire as well as UMass Dartmouth. You remember when we did that a couple weeks ago?
Yep.
And we used this worksheet, we figured out all of your costs and all of the grants and loans. We talked a little bit about the raw numbers, but today's conversation is focused a little bit more around how we might have to come up with what's left over to pay. Because if you remember, unfortunately at either of your schools, that it wasn't fully covered by financial aid.
Right.
So if, going back to when we filled this out last week, I think the first thing I wanted to highlight too is actually the cost of attendance, because it wasn't necessarily on the award letter, and they actually haven't even finalized those costs yet. So they could still even go up, probably just a little come, April, May, or June. So using this number is really just an estimate, and even all these numbers on here, they're close, but they are still all estimates.
Will they let me know if the cost of attendance goes up, or?
They should. They should send you something in the mail, but also in the summer, when you decide the school that you want to go to, they will have, you'll have to set up an online account with that college. You'll sign up for your email, and you'll use that to register for classes. And through there, you'll be able to see the full cost, and you'll actually get your tuition bill, usually, hopefully by mid to late July, so you'll know exactly how much your family will need to come up for that first semester.
Okay.
Great. So we already filled out and broke down all the financial aid. For the purposes of our conversation today, we're going to take a look at just this bottom, this bottom part right here, where it talks about the unmet need. And if you remember, the unmet need is all that's not covered by financial aid. We figured that the University of New Hampshire, the leftover amount was around $10,700 that you and your family would have to finance to go to school. And then the second one is UMass Dartmouth, and their cost is right around $6,000. That's not due all up front. They do break that into semesters. So roughly, if you wanted to pay that out of pocket, you'd owe about half that each semester. So usually by August, and then the second half would be due around January.
Okay.
Pretty clear?
Yeah. Yep.
I know it's a lot of money, but again, this is the purpose of this conversation is to figure out all the different things that we can do to lower that number and then get you off to the school that you want to go to. Are you leaning toward one school or the other, or are you pretty happy with both choices?
I haven't made a decision yet. I'm excited about both schools and getting accepted to both, but I don't. My family and I haven't made a decision yet.
Great. Well, it's definitely something you should be proud of. They're both great schools. And one thing that University of New Hampshire, we did figure out it costs almost $40,000, and they did have a leftover amount of around $10,000. UMass Dartmouth is almost half the price, and you can see it's actually pretty close to about half that amount too. So each schools, even though they cost differently, they actually they package pretty similarly. But again, we're dealing with raw numbers here, but we're going to hopefully come up and figure out what we can do to come up with these things. So there's a few things that I'd love to go over, and you have your notebook handy. I think it's important if you want to write down a bunch of these, because this is what you want to go home with to talk to your parents about. Because you mentioned you and your family, I think that's an important thing, that this is a family decision, because if they've saved, or even if they haven't, or they might take out a loan, if you remember, you had to give all of your parents financial information to complete all of your financial aid forms. So this is definitely a family decision. I'm glad to hear that you're pretty open to having your mom or your dad kind of in this conversation. So a few things that we can talk about. There's leftover amounts to pay at each school. Have you been applying to any outside scholarships?
Yeah, I have the list that you gave me at the beginning of the year, and there are a couple that I've applied for.
Okay. You haven't heard back yet, though?
No.
Okay.
And I think I should apply for more, but I haven't been able to find them.
Yeah. Well, I still have, I'm going to give you another I have that same resource today, but only of the ones that are kind of left over that are still, that you can still apply for. There's still at least a half a dozen that, with your GPA and your involvement in school and community activities, that I think you'd still be a great applicant for. That is something that can go straight to filling in this gap right here that you have to fill in, is this outside scholarship. So imagine if you got 2 awards that are each $2,500. you could almost fully cover your whole balance at UMass Dartmouth, or cut your UNH your UNH gap in half. So even piecing a couple of the smaller ones together, this is a really, really good resource that you can use.
Okay.
So you have outside scholarships. One thing that we can also do is if you've narrowed it down to both UNH and UMass Dartmouth, we can communicate with both those schools and possibly advocate for more aid. There might be a little wiggle room, and I have a draft of a letter that I can show you, and you can talk to your family if they want to connect with the financial aid office. The schools might be able to offer you maybe not the whole thing, but maybe an extra $1,000 or $1,500 for you and for you to be able to afford to go there.
And we just have to send them a letter, or
generally you start with a phone call, and you would call the financial aid office to see if they have a form that you would need to fill out. Sometimes it could be like a change of family circumstances or just a general appeal to get more aid. The schools both gave you a lot of money to come there, and I think they want you to come there, but they also understand that you might not have enough to be able to afford to go there. So that'll be the second thing we'll definitely go over. And speaking of family, I think I'm not sure if maybe your family does have some savings, or you have some savings. I think that can go to filling in this gap or paying for your books. And then obviously if I know that you work, and I know it's tough with the iPhone and all that kind of stuff, and going out with your friends in the summer before you go off to college. But I think last summer when we talked about your job last summer, you made about $1,500 to $2,000. You could bump your hours a little bit, save 75% of that or so. That's you could maybe come up with a third to a half of it at UMass Dartmouth, or a good chunk at UNH as well. So you're probably catching up on a theme of this. Probably not going to find one way to cover all of these things.
Yeah.
We're going to try to piece all of these things together, whether it's through advocating, outside scholarships, summer earnings, your family. If your family would feel more comfortable with a monthly payment, there's those options out there. So maybe they could afford to pay $100 or $200 a month over the course of an entire school year, and that could again bring down your balance a little bit. And you can come and see me on how to set up. They're called tuition payment plans that we can sign up for. They're generally around $50 or $60 to set up, but the interest is free. There's no interest on it at all, and it's a good way where you don't necessarily need to come up with $2,000 all at once. You could maybe say $200 a month for 10 months.
And that's not a loan like those, right?
No. So this is that's direct money, so straight from your family. So that would not be, you would not need to pay that money back. You're actually paying it to the school, so you don't have to take out additional loan money.
Okay.
And that is an option, additional loan money, if this is something, and this is probably a big conversation that we might need to have with your parents if they're willing to borrow and they want to borrow money for you to go to college. There are loan programs out there for them to apply to. The biggest one being the Parent Plus, and it is a federal loan program. We'll talk a little bit more in detail with your parents about it, but they could borrow up to how much you would need at an individual school. I think borrowing $6,000 or $10,000 in 1 year is a sizable chunk of money, especially on top of the loans that they had already offered you. So again, if we can combine scholarships, summer earnings, savings, and then maybe if there's still a little bit more at the very end, we can apply for that loan. And we wouldn't need to apply for that loan until even August. So you'd have a good amount of time to work with all these other things. Okay. And then at the very end, if you still need some additional loan money or some additional resources, we could apply for that loan too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I already have like $5,500 in loans. It feels like I shouldn't take out more loans. That seems like a lot. It
is. Yeah, I think we try. We try to talk to families that looking at your federal eligibility as kind of not necessarily the maximum, but it's definitely a solid start. Looking at $5,500 your freshman year, probably right around that your next year. If you're looking at, and if you remember the back of the worksheet, we looked at what around $5,500 in loans looks like every year in college. Your total loan debt would be just over $20,000, and This would be with no additional loans, your monthly loan payment of right around $230. Again, an estimate, but again, that's something you would need till after graduation. So I think it's, again, keeping an eye on that loan balance. And again, that would be parent loan money too. So that would be money your parents would have to pay. And I know that they might not have all the resources to pay something like that back too. So that's why I think we're focusing a lot on all these other things. And at the very end, if there's still kind of a gap, I think that the timing of this conversation is perfect. It's mid-March. You'll make your decision over the course of the next few weeks on what college you want to go to, and then you'll have 5 or 6 months, and you'll have a much clearer idea of how much you'll have to pay and how much you'll need to come up with for you and your family. So feel a little bit better?
Yeah, it feels better, like knowing that there are more options than
just a loan.
Just loans, yeah. So, and probably just need to look for more scholarships.
Yeah, I know, totally. The last thing is you were offered work study in both of your award letters. So that work study money doesn't come up front, we had mentioned earlier, but it can be used when you get to campus and you can find work. You can use that for books, going out with your friends, transportation. You can also just save the money and then use that to pay off some of your next semester's balance as well. So that money would be yours to spend as you will. So, quick review of what do your notes say about some of the next steps, and I really want you to go home, and I have the worksheet here. I'll also email this to you directly, so you'll have an electronic copy. I think it's really important to walk through this with your parents. I think it's definitely fair for them to kind of look through this, and then if they have questions about this, about some of your action steps, we should set up a meeting. I think, like I said, I think we have it's the perfect time for this, and I'm excited to help you over the course of the next few months.
Okay.
Excellent.
So looking for scholarships, and you can help me with that,
Yep.
right? And call the financial aid office to see if we can get more aid.
Totally.
Looking into a payment plan possibly, loans if need be, and then work study and connecting with people at school to do that, right?
Yep. And then the other thing about summer earnings, I think even talking to, I know that you don't work as much during the school year, but maybe talking to your boss right now to see if you can bump up your employment in the summer to get some extra hours, and maybe you can lean on him that you need some extra money for college. He or she can give you a few more hours at work. Cool?
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming in today. Like I said, you should, first of all, celebrate that you got into these schools. They gave you a ton of money, but we'll figure out how we can get the rest of this money to go to school.
Okay, great.
All right, excellent.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
Take care of yourself, Dave.